Family thinks 11-year-old daughter is brain dead. 4 years later she woke up and one word shock everyone. Family thinks 11-year-old daughter is brain dead until she wakes up 4 years later and shocks everyone. A child becoming deathly ill is a parent's worst nightmare. Parents pray that their children will remain healthy through childhood and hopefully outlive their parents. Sadly, this is not always the case. Victoria Arlen's ordeal is heartbreaking. This is the story of the family who thought their 11-year-old daughter was brain dead. But 4 years later she woke up and her first words shocked everyone. Victoria is a triplet with 2 brothers. When she was young, loved to dance. She was also very athletic and excellent at sports. Overall, she was very happy and energetic. Sadly though, when Victoria was 11 years old, her entire life changed in 2006 when she was 11. She developed flu symptoms not long after the symptoms started. She began fainting and then was diagnosed with pneumonia. About 2 weeks later she couldn't feel her legs and her doctors told her parents that she was paralyzed from the waist down. Little by little, her body began shutting down within days of beginning of her symptoms. The doctors discovered that she had a severe inflammation of her spinal cord and her brain. While her family stood by her bedside, they were forced to watch while she lost the ability to eat because she couldn't swallow properly. They also watched her lose the ability to talk because she couldn't find the right words. Finally, she lost the ability to move on her own at all. It wasn't long before this poor little girl slipped into a coma. According to her parents, it was as though somebody had flipped a switch on the board that controlled her brain and she was slowly slipping away from them. Soon everything went dark and Victoria lay in a coma for close to 4 years. Victoria remained in a coma. She was in a vegetative state, and the doctors were using IT tube to feed her to keep her alive. When the ordeal began, the doctors told Victoria's parents that it was very unlikely that she would ever recover. Her mother, Jacqueline, thought that they had lost her for good. What her family and her doctors didn't know was that Victoria was still awake. She could hear her loved ones talking in the hospital room. About 2 years after slipping into the coma, she woke up mentally. She couldn't move her body or respond and react the way she wanted, but she could hear the people around her talking. Unfortunately, she wanted to react, but her body wouldn't let her. The saddest part was that she couldn't even tell her family and her doctors what was going on. The doctors finally discovered the disease that caused her brain and spinal cord to swell. She heard the doctors tell her parents that she was basically brain dead and that she would remain like this for the rest of her life. At that moment, she panicked. She wondered what would happen if her parents listened to her doctors instead. Though they believed in Victoria, they took her home and they set up a hospital room in her home in New Hampshire. Her parents took care of her. She had an older brother and the 2 brothers that made up the triplets, all talking. Sure, often they let her know what was going on in the world. All of this talk inspired Victoria to get stronger and to fight for her life the whole time, though they never knew that she could hear anything that they were saying to her. Finally, in December 2009, her family got the miracle that they had been praying for. It started when Victoria began making eye contact with her mother. After that, she gradually started coming out of her vegetative state. Soon she was able to move a finger and then she could wave at her family. When they came in the room, eventually she was able to say words and then form sentences. She had basically been asleep for almost 4 years. In that time a lot had happened. First she began eating pudding on her own. It wasn't long before she could eat a steak on her own. It was her first steak in 4 years. She was also able to hold a smartphone for the first time when she went into a coma. These phones weren't popular yet. Her brothers taught her all about Facebook and they showed her what it meant to poke someone on the social media app. With all the progress she had made, she was still unable to move her legs. According to her doctors, the swelling in her brain and spinal cord had caused permanent damage. They told her that she would be paralyzed from the waist down for the rest of her life. Each time she saw a different doctor, they told her the same thing. They all agreed that she had to get used to using a wheelchair. It was the only way that she would ever get around on her own. Well, Victoria didn't want to believe it. She was sure that she would walk again despite what the doctors told her. While she had a positive attitude about her ability to walk, things weren't always easy. When she returned to school, she began high school and some of the kids bullied her for being in a wheelchair at first. She couldn't wait to go back to school, but after the first day and the kids made fun of her, she never wanted to go back. After the first day, she came home in tears. Her parents made a promise to do everything they could to help her gain the confidence that she needed to go back to school. Victoria had always loved to swim. She thought she would never be able to ever again, but her brothers threw her into the family pool. She was scared, but she swam. Soon she was competing in 2012 when she was 17 years old. She competed in the Paralympic Olympic Games. She won a gold medal and 2 silver medals. She even set a world record for the 100-meter freestyle. After the games, everyone knew who she was and she was invited to be a guest lecturer and people began to recognize her. When she was out, she was also photographed for television and magazines. Her only problem was that she still couldn't walk. In 2013 she moved to San Diego to participate in the Project Walk program. It was a program to help paralyzed people walk again. She realized the project could help, but she didn't want to be on opposite coasts from her father and her brother. Her parents decided to open a franchise on the East Coast so that she could one day walk again while living close to home. Her parents took a second mortgage out on the house to open a Project Walk in Boston on November 11, 2015. Victoria took her first steps each day. She trained for 6 hours and finally on March 3, 2016, she no longer needed crutches. She could walk on her own. She still wears leg braces and walking can be a struggle. However, she did what she said she would. She proved her doctors wrong. Subscribe for more.